Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. I'll tell you what, when I say I'm back, I'm literally back because if you listen to Sunday morning's Aaron Torres pod, now, as you know, we go live every Sunday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, reacting to the big news from the day before in college football, soon to be college basketball. But if you listen to the show, you know, we hit on all the big topics, Bama, Georgia, Oregon, Penn State. But I said a couple times throughout the show, I said, hey, look, we think there's a possibility that Sam Pittman, Arkansas football coach, could be fired during this show. If it happens, we are going to react to it. And if it doesn't happen during the show, but it does happen at some point during the day, we will come back and react to it then. Well, I bring it up because, of course, naturally, about 10 minutes after I got off air, about 12:30 or so Eastern time, right as the NFL slate was about to begin, Sam Pittman, Arkansas head coach since 2020, was fired. And so what I want to do, I want to spend just a few minutes reacting to this. And then, of course, also beyond that, talking about what I think most people care about at this point, coaching candidates at Arkansas. By the way, if you are listening on pod, we're just going to lump this on at the end of the pod. Sunday's show is an hour and 10 minutes, whatever. We're going to add this at the end. But Arkansas is looking for a new head coach. Listen, I think two very important contradicting things can be true, right? This was absolutely positively timed. But we also have to, and I think we should take half a second to acknowledge, like, as bad as it ended, Sam Pittman did, especially early on in his tenure, right the ship at Arkansas. And in some ways, we have to give him credit for getting the train back on tracks and essentially, I think, setting things up so that this job is going to be a better job for the next coach than it was for him when he took over, okay? So listen, I think most people know the backstory, but obviously Sam Pittman was hired in 2020 in COVID, and it came at the heels of the Chad Morris era, okay? We're certainly not going to live through the Chad Morris era at this moment in time, but 2-10 in year one, 2-8 when he was fired in year two. This was the worst program in the SEC, and so we have to give Sam Pittman credit. Year one, remember, that was the COVID-only season. They went 3-7, the COVID-only season, SEC-only games is what I should say during the COVID season. He wins 3 games that year, and then year two, to his credit, had a 9-win season. Goes 8-4 during the regular season, goes to the bowl game, beats Penn State. And listen, it was an incredible run. It was an incredible moment. But unfortunately, it just wasn't something that he could sustain. I think there was a lot of different variables as to why. There was coaching turnover. I think he benefited from the COVID waiver, one of those early teams that was able to retain a lot of players early. But the bottom line is, it was great early. He couldn't sustain it. I think a lot of people thought he was going to be out after the 2023 season. He hires Bobby Petrino that offseason. I've told you many times, but I was actually in Fayetteville when the hire got made. We want Bobby was the chant at the Duke, Arkansas game, and was able to do enough to get to a bowl game and maintain it. But listen, if you listen to this show, if you know anything about my work, I've said pretty consistently, it had to end. The Memphis game, to me, listen, I'll say this. I think the Memphis and Notre Dame games back-to-back were really turning points. And I'll say quickly why, and then we'll get to candidates, I promise. But to me, I thought they were turning points for this reason. I think there is a lot of conversation on the national scale about, what is Arkansas, and Pittman's making bowl games, and what are you people complaining about, and whatever. And in this new world of a 16-team SEC, it's going to be tough, and somebody's got to lose games. And you should be happy with being 6-6 every year, okay? Now, one, I don't believe that. We'll get to that in a minute. But I think, two, as importantly, that's why the Memphis and Notre Dame games back-to-back were so important. I said it. The Memphis game, it was a noon Eastern, 11 a.m. Central kickoff. It was at a time when, if you remember, Clemson was playing, but they go into this long lightning delay, and Texas Tech was blowing out Utah, okay? And I only bring that up because everybody watching college football at that moment in time was watching Arkansas. Everybody was watching Arkansas unable to tackle, defense is a mess, fumble in the red zone. I'm not blaming any one person, okay? But at the same time, you could see it's not just a, oh, be grateful to be 6-6. It's like, no, that was a game that you absolutely positively not only should have won, but you had about 10 different chances to win it. And the defeat, or what was it? A defeat was grabbed from the jaws of victory time and time and time again. So that was bad. Then you have Notre Dame, where you give up 42 points in the first half. I actually give Arkansas fans credit. They spoke with their feet. They spoke with their wallets. They said, we're not staying here for the second half of this crap. And I think once that happened, it became unsustainable to keep him. Obviously, you go into the bye now, and it kind of allows for a little bit of a clean break. I know there was some thought of, could you possibly keep him just to get the record below 500 to lower the buyout? Listen, I don't know all the economics of the state of Arkansas. I know there are enough people that can write the difference of a $3 million check. I don't think you could go on with this for 3 more weeks because you have the bye and then 2 more losses. And then, by the way, then the season's just done. I mean, you're 2-3 right now. I mean, you could, in theory, rally to get to some sort of level of respectability. You go to 2-5, the season's over. So Pittman's out. Credit for what he did. It's time to look ahead, though. And it's time to look ahead with a few caveats. One, first of all, I want to address the whole what is Arkansas supposed to be in this era thing? Because, again, it was a big topic of conversation in the offseason. And I heard both national, but I also heard some local people like, what do you think we're supposed to be? Be grateful. Be happy that we're 6-6 and going to bowl games. And listen, I think there are certainly some schools and some jobs where there are inherent advantages over others. I think Ohio State is a better job than Purdue in football. If that offends Purdue fans, I'm sorry. I think that Florida is a better job than Central Florida. I think that, I'm just trying to think here off the top of my head, Texas is a better job than TCU. And what I'm not saying is that I believe that Arkansas, and I don't even forget what I think. I have yet to meet an Arkansas fan that thinks, we should be 12-0 every year, beat Bama, beat Texas, go win a national. I have yet to meet anybody that feels that way. What I do think Arkansas fans feel is 2 things. One, can we be respectable? Can you not embarrass the university, this state, every single Saturday when you take the field? And then I think more importantly, and this is the big question, can you find somebody that can elevate the program to the point where you're occasionally in the conversation for a college football playoff? I'll go a little side topic and then we'll get back to it. But I remember when the Nebraska job opened up about 3 years ago, and we had a 12-team playoff announced. The transfer portal was whatever. And I remember saying at the time with Nebraska, I said, don't look at it through the lens of you have to win the Big Ten and go to the Big Ten championship to make the college football playoff, but think, can we find the guy that can get us into the top 3, maybe top 4 every couple years? I said, I think Nebraska can. And I think it's the same with Arkansas. Nobody is saying you have to find a coach that gets you to 12-0 every year, because ask Kirby Smart, ask Kalen DeBoer, ask Steve Sarkisian. 12-0 seasons don't exist in the SEC anymore. But can you get somebody to get you back to respectability? And here's the counterpoint. You can. It's just a matter of if you're going to find him. You know how I know? Because Ole Miss has the best coach in the history of their program right now in Lane Kiffin. Go back and look, because I looked it up on Saturday. I think they have 7. I think they had 7 10-win seasons in 100 years before Lane Kiffin. He has 3 in the last 4. It can be done at Ole Miss. It can be done at Missouri. And if it can be done at those places, it can be done at Arkansas. Not saying it will be, but I'm saying it can be. So I think that's a variable. And I think the other variable that's worth noting as well, who's going to be making this hire? I don't have this on 100% authority. I don't think Hunter Yurachek, the current AD, is going to be the one who makes this hire. And so the question becomes, who ultimately makes the hire? Is he fired before the hiring process begins? And then counterpoint, if he's not fired, is somebody above him making the decision? We're seeing that at Virginia Tech. We're seeing that at UCLA, where I don't think the AD has much say in the next hire, whatever. Let's get to candidates. Quick reminder, by the way, Torres on the Hogs. Torres on the Hogs. It's that time of year. If you need, we have an intern that runs that, but this is where you're going to find candidates, interviews, whatever, the future of this program. Torres on the Hogs. It is all my content, but then we also have a great intern, Charlie, who is at the University of Arkansas. Make sure you're following Torres on the Hogs. All right, let's get to some candidates. I certainly have some names that I think are worth noting, but what I would also say is I think there's one name that has to be put to the front of the list, and it's because Hunter Yurachek is not giving away a lot as to what this search will look like. He did give away something in the press release, though. Bobby Petrino has, of course, been named the interim head coach. Of course, we know Arkansas Razorbacks former head coach. We know how he left. We know why he came back, whatever. But Bobby Petrino, this was interesting in the statement. If you read the statement carefully, it's this long list of blah, 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 and we want to thank Sam Pittman. This is the last sentence of the statement. The last sentence of the statement from Hunter Yurachek, the AD, says, "We will begin a national search for our next head coach immediately, and that search will include Coach Petrino, who has expressed his desire to be a candidate full-time for this job." This is interesting news, okay? So a couple days ago, we talked about the Brandon Marcello report, Brandon Marcello from CBS. And basically in that report, I kind of shared what I had known and, whatever. And what I had been told when Bobby Petrino got hired as the OC. I truly believe this. I don't believe that it's revisionist history. I don't think he came to Arkansas with the intention of stealing Sam Pittman's job. I think he came to Arkansas with the intention of saving Sam Pittman's job. You just need a little bit of a boost to the offense. The defense had been good, whatever, blah, 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 blah. We're going to work on it. I'm going to get this offense humming. And I don't want to be a head coach. This NIL thing is too much for me. I'm in my 60s. I'm over it. I just want to coach ball. I want to draw up plays. I want to create offenses. I want to design offenses, whatever. And then, of course, over the last couple months, it's become clear that Sam Pittman is not going to be the guy. And we heard the Brandon Marcello report where he said Bobby Petrino is, quote, working the phones in Arkansas. Now, it's worth noting, Marcello, who I don't know, but he does great work, he did sort of run back those quotes. He said, this isn't Bobby Petrino trying to stab Sam Pittman in the back. But it's clear that Bobby Petrino, as Hunter Yurachek said, has expressed interest in the job. And so it'll be interesting to see if Bobby Petrino can put himself in position. I would tend to lean towards, I don't think he will be the next head coach. And I'm not rooting against it. Listen, I don't really care. We all know how he left. I still think he is a great offensive play designer. I think there's a couple variables that we have to consider with Bobby Petrino. One, last time he was a head coach, at least at the FBS level, it did not end well. Louisville, if you remember, it fell apart really quick. He had Lamar Jackson, Heisman Trophy winner. And then all of a sudden, boom, it was over. He went 2-8 in his last year. He gets fired. So he gets let go. He's at Missouri State, which at the time was an FCS program. It's now in the FBS. It was kind of up and down, but was not great to end his time as a head coach. And I think there's a couple other things. The Arkansas schedule is just really hard going forward. Arkansas is going into a bye this week. They come out of the bye at Texas A&M at home, Auburn at home, Mississippi State at home. So it doesn't get any easier. Then, by the way, at LSU, at Texas, Missouri. So I haven't looked at the new AP Top 25. I would venture to guess that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of your final 7 will be against ranked teams. Mississippi State was probably, a score in overtime or a stop in overtime away from being ranked this week. And Auburn, for all of its problems offensively, still has one of the best defenses in college football. So we'll see if Bobby Petrino can get this team going. I don't have a number on what he would have to do to keep the job. I mean, I think, listen, if he gets this team bowl eligible, sitting at 2-3 with what that would be, he'd have to go 4 and, am I right on my math here? 4-3, is that right? 4-3 over his final 7. I mean, that gets you to bowl eligibility. You're going to have beaten a couple teams at that point that you're not expected to beat. I know 6-6 doesn't sound like this crazy ceiling, but if you go 6-6 with the schedule remaining, it means you won at Tennessee, you beat A&M, you won at LSU, you won at you're going to have won the games that matter. And so I think 6-6, 4-3, certainly 5-2 would get him the job. I'm just dubious that he can get there. It is worth noting, as bad as the defense was on Saturday, they did him no favors. The offense was not very good either. And then we'll also just see how he handles running an offense while also running an entire program. Beyond him, let's talk about the other candidates. So Bobby Petrino has expressed interest in the job. I have repeatedly expressed interest in seeing Jon Gruden get this job. Okay. So Jon Gruden, for people who are tuning in, probably sitting there saying, Jon Gruden, where are you coming up with Jon Gruden from? Let's never forget that over the summer, that Jon Gruden video was dropped of Jon Gruden saying he would, quote, die to coach in the SEC. He was visiting Georgia. He was kind of doing one of those campus visits, meeting with the team. He said, I got to coach against Georgia, run through those hedges and beat your ass or something like that. I don't know exactly what he said. But the point I'm trying to make is he wants to coach football again. Dave Portnoy, his current boss at Barstool Sports, has said we don't expect to have him forever. And he's currently in the middle of a lawsuit with the NFL. He ain't going back to the NFL. He wants to come to college, and he wants to coach in the SEC. Those feel like three pretty good check marks to me. And I said this on Saturday when we did our immediate reaction. I said if it was up to me, I would have, as soon as I saw that video, if I was Hunter Yurachek, I would have been on a plane to Tampa just to meet with him and say, look, if it goes sideways, let's have a real conversation. Now, a couple things. One, I know what people are going to say. Oh, he wasn't even that good in the NFL. He went 8-8 with the Raiders a few years ago. Look at what the Raiders are doing on an annual basis. Going 500 as the Raiders head coach is like going, 15-2 in this 17-game era if you're the Buffalo Bills head coach, okay? It's a good job. So don't tell me that he can't win. Two, I'll say this, and I said this on Saturday. I know there's kind of this weird hesitation about bringing in NFL guys in this era. Belichick, it looks like, is going to crash and burn. This, to me, feels much more like Deion Sanders at Colorado than it does Bill Belichick in North Carolina. Jon Gruden would create interest. He would create excitement. And I think this is an important thing I forgot to even mention the other day. He resonates with young people. He works for the hottest, coolest, hippest brand outside of Torres Media with the young people. That's Barstool. So people know who he is. They see him on their shows. You mean to tell me that's not going to resonate with recruits? You mean to tell me that when he walks in a high school, there isn't going to be a line out the door to take pictures with him? Like, with due respect, who's going to create more interest in their program in the next 3 years? Josh Heupel, Tennessee, or Jon Gruden if he's at Arkansas? Jeff Lebby, Jon Gruden. Heck, I'll take it a step further. Unless Brian Kelly's yelling and screaming at somebody, he never seems to make any positive. Jon Gruden would move the freaking needle. I think he'd recruit really well. Now, can you win? I don't know. Will he have success? I don't know. But I think that professional mindset, I think it would work. I really do. What does work mean? I don't think it means 12-0. But again, I don't think that's anyone's expectation. So Jon Gruden would be the guy that I would hire, again, because he wants to coach college football. The other thing I would say is if you're really giving Bobby Petrino a chance, I do think it kind of puts you in a sketchy spot because I think Florida is probably going to open up in about 3 weeks from now. They have their second bye going into the Georgia game. They will be beyond the 4-game redshirt situation at that point. So I think Billy Napier's out. I think Gruden would clearly prefer Florida. It's just a question of whether Florida would prefer him. So Gruden would be my call. I think Petrino's going to get a legitimate shot. Some of the other names, listen, you know who they are. Rhett Lashlee, former Arkansas player from the state of Arkansas. Gus Malzahn coached him in high school. That's how long he's been around. He's at SMU. And a lot of people have asked, like, well, SMU, they just made the playoff. Why would you leave? Here's what I would say. What I would say is that I know that they just made the playoff. And I know that, that it's a tough place, in my opinion, that SMU in the ACC versus Arkansas in the SEC, what's the better job relative to the rest of the jobs in the conference? Yes, I think you would argue that transparently, probably Arkansas in the SEC is behind SMU in the ACC, but it's not apples to apples. And what I go back to is, do you want to spend the next 5 years, 10 years coaching in the ACC, or do you want to get to the SEC? We don't even know what the ACC is going to be in 5 years. And, literally 5 years, the ACC contract is up, TV contract is up for renegotiation. You mean to tell me you don't think that North Carolina, Clemson, Florida State, those kind of schools are already trying to find their way out? So what is the ACC even in 5 years? And if you feel like there isn't stability, then you go to where there is stability, and that's the SEC. I think the other thing, hometown, homegrown, he's going to have opportunity. He's going to have time. You're taking over in a situation where nobody expects you to win right away. So we'll see what happens there. The counter to that, of course, is a little PTSD from Arkansas fans. Of course, prior to Sam Pittman, the previous head coach came from SMU. His name was Chad Morris. As I mentioned, it did not work out well. So I know that's a complete no-go for a lot of the fan base. A couple other names, listen, I don't know if he's actually a candidate. The name Gus Malzahn is going to float around, just like it has for every Arkansas coaching search for the last 15 years. He's from the state of Arkansas, high school coaching legend, former OC, the wild hog, with whoever, Darren, like I don't even remember what Gus Malzahn was doing or how he was doing it. I just remember that, he is a legend in that state. And like I said, I do think there is something to the fact that his name still resonates with a certain percentage of that fan base, a certain part of the fan base. And like, let's also be honest, like, remember, he was at Arkansas 20 years ago as an OC, okay? Well, you do the mental math. The guy's about to be 60 years old, and I only bring it up because a lot of the people that have money, a lot of the people that have the money to influence things in Arkansas, you would think would probably be around the same age as Gus Malzahn and maybe want that. I don't think he's a legitimate candidate. But again, we don't know who's actually making the hire and who has the power to make the hire, and it only takes one person to sign up for you. Now, what I would say is it's almost a Petrino thing. I love Bobby Petrino calling my plays in 2025. I don't know if I want him running my program. Bobby Petrino will have a chance to prove me wrong, but it's the same with Gus Malzahn. There's a reason he left UCF. Everything other than his offense, kind of a disaster last year. So he leaves UCF. He's having this rejuvenation as an OC at Florida State. Even if you watch the game on Friday night, they didn't lose because of his offense. So Gus Malzahn's another name that's going to kind of come up, from some of the younger. And by the way, I don't think he's a legitimate candidate, but I think it's a name that will come up. Some of the younger guys, GJ Kinney is a guy kind of from that area of the country. He coaches right now at Texas State. He played at Tulsa and the University of Texas. He's coaching pretty well. My only concern would be he's a former NFL quarterback, and his offenses have not been very good. And I think after everything we've been through with Arkansas the last couple of years, you need to be interesting, right? Go get either be interesting with the head coach himself or be interesting with the way that you're going to play. And so, I'm not saying he'd be bad. I just don't know if he'd be my first choice. Couple other names, the young guys, Alex Golish at USF could be, maybe will be phenomenal. Obviously coming off the SEC win, at Florida the last couple weeks. He obviously has South Florida in position to potentially compete for a college football playoff berth. The only holdup with him is 7-6. He's been good, but this is the first year that it appears as though he may be great. And so I just bring it up because, I think you got to get to the finish line and see, can he put together an 8, 9, 10 win team? And even if he can, is that enough to earn an SEC job after 3 years as a head coach? Kind of at the same time, you keep going on and on down the list. Outside of Golish, John Summerall is going to be in there. We've talked about John Summerall, played at Kentucky, coached at Kentucky, also coached at Ole Miss. He's from the state of Alabama. So I think he's going to be a candidate with any of these jobs that open. If Lane Kiffin leaves for, say, Florida, I think he's the number one candidate at Ole Miss. He's from Kentucky. I certainly think he's the number one candidate if they can somehow get out of that Mark Stoops contract, and I still think that they will. And listen, I think Saturday may have been a tipping point with Auburn fans and Hugh Freeze. They wanted to believe. You go to Texas A&M, you basically don't put up a touchdown the entire game. You can't stop committing penalties. You commit to running the football, then you stop running the football. Kind of a train wreck at Auburn. And oh, by the way, they're going into their bye. They get Georgia on the back end of their bye. At least that game's at home. So I just bring it up because Hugh Freeze has to start winning some games. But I think Summerall is a candidate at all those jobs, and he's kind of got some more natural ties, no pun intended with the natural state, but more natural ties to a school like Kentucky, to a school like Ole Miss, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll see what happens there. Lastly, what I would say is this, is that I feel like in football more than even college basketball, and I think a lot of people know, but I cover a lot of college basketball. It feels like more often than not, the actual candidates aren't necessarily, the actual guy that gets the job isn't necessarily like the number one candidate when the first list comes out. I go back to, remember when LSU opened and when Coach O, basically was fired in the middle of the season, and you saw Mel, remember the names? Mel Tucker was on that list and Dave Aranda. Then he started hearing Lincoln Riley, and then boom, you wake up and Brian Kelly's the head coach. Conversely, with USC, which opened up that same year, nobody was talking Lincoln Riley, and he ends up as the USC head coach. So I'm not saying you get Lincoln Riley or Brian Kelly, but what I am saying is there's always something that happens, and rarely is it the big names. How many jobs has Lane Kiffin been linked to that he either hasn't gotten or hasn't been interested in? How many jobs has Dan Lanning been linked to that he just goes to the press conference the next day and says, I ain't going nowhere? And so conversely, there's always guys that you don't think are candidates that could be. So I've said my piece. Petrino's going to have his shot. I would call Gruden. I'm a big dreamer. I'm a big thinker. I don't know what Hunter Yurachek's going to do. And frankly, I don't even know if Hunter Yurachek is going to have the chance to make the hire. But I appreciate your support. I appreciate you listening. Don't appreciate them firing Sam Pittman right after we went off air. But I'll tell you what, make sure you're following Torres on the Hogs. By the way, SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. Arkansas fans, maybe you feel like, you know what, I can go to a game again and support this team. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase. So we appreciate their support. And the only other thing I'd say, make sure to lock into the pod page because we are going to be talking quite a bit about this in the coming weeks. We will chat soon.